Welcome to another edition of Swim Easy Speed. My name is Tim Floyd. I'm a longtime swim coach and triathlon coach. Today we're going to look at a athlete that I just had in the pool, and he's an age group triathlete, so we'll move it forward a little bit. He's an age group triathlete, didn't start swimming until he was an adult, so adult onset swimmer, and largely self-taught. So he told me the first time he had ever been with a professional coach to get his stroke looked at, to work on some issues that he was having and seeing how he could get better. So most of his information he got from just being in the triathlon community or watching YouTube videos or reading articles online. So we'll take a look here and kind of show you what it looks like. So, the biggest thing is he's moving pretty well. I mean, the stroke is fairly balanced. The biggest issue is, his angle of his body on the water. And we'll get into this as we kind of go along, kind of look at it from a couple different points of view. He's rotating a little bit too much to get the stroke, and we can take a look at that to get the breath, and we'll take a look at that. And you can see kind of when he kicks, the kick doesn't look really that connected to the stroke. So, one of the things with the endless pool that happens is he said he was really feeling that his back end was falling down. And one of the things that the endless pool does is, and we've talked about this before, is that with that current, you swimming against the current, if you don't have kind of this rock solid connection in the core, it's going to push your back end down. If your ankles aren't really, and toes really, really aren't pointed, so if they're pointing down at all at the bottom of the pool, it's going to pull your back end down. So think about kind of like flaps on an airplane when they go down when you're trying to land. So we'll go underwater here in a second. So here we are. He's got a pretty good movement there, but you can see, here's part of the issue that I get a lot with triathletes is, and he and I talked about this in the session, was that, everyone's read the book in triathlon or heard the wisdom of, you don't really want to kick in triathlon for the swim because you want to save it for the bike and the run. And I get it. Okay. This was the same kind of wisdom that was passed down in triathlon when I did triathlon. I did my first one in 1988, and I heard that. And, obviously what we don't want, we don't have the time or the training to develop a really good 6-beat kick for a open water triathlon swim. But what we want to do is we want to develop a really good 2-beat kick that's efficient. And more importantly, that connects the whole body together. And because ultimately what the swim stroke is the whole body. It's a full body movement. The whole body is coordinated in getting as much pressure on your hands as you can. That's where the propulsion is generated from. And the majority of the propulsion is generated from. And then where we've got enough connection and balance in the water and enough strength in our core to keep us as long and flat on the water as possible. So we've got that maximum water line, so that gives us the most distance per stroke, and then we are able to generate the most amount of pressure on our hands. So what we're looking to do then is get the core connected to our lower body, the core connected to our upper body, and then the core connecting the upper and lower body together. So it's this one very fluid, connected neuromuscular movement that's being driven by the brain and the nervous system. And the only way that happens, neuroscientists have a saying, neurons that fire together wire together. So if you never kick, if you never develop that skill of integrating that part of your body into the stroke, this is typically what it looks like. And the results. So that was kind of the big thing that we really kind of tried to focus on in this session with him. And, because there's a lot of other things that he's doing really well. So if you look at this overhead, so if we look at the left here, he's got really, really straight out from that shoulder, he's driving everything straight forward, and then from the top of his head through kind of his tailbone, it's a straight line. It looks good. When we come on to this right side, so we rotate through, and then this is where some of the issues kind of start. So you can see right here, we're starting to develop a little curve kind of in the body. And then here's kind of from that shoulder, so we're straight out. So then we've got, some of the momentum going that way that we've got to correct for. Again, this is kind of core related, and it's also kind of just where he's been stroking. So the movement that he's been making over and over and over again. We tried to work on this a little bit in the session, but I wanted to get back to kind of the core engagement was the majority of what we wanted to work on. We also tried to work on some balance in the water. So just, hey, can you get long and flat on the water without really just floating there? And then you can see kind of when he takes a breath, how much the entire body rotates and how much his head rotates to get the breath. Feet are kind of coming apart pretty wide there, actually right there. So those are some of the things that we talked about, and then we'll go forward. So this front view, looks pretty good. You can see how much his head's coming up, on this shoulder. That's pretty decent. So here we are. There's the plane of the water. So he's about, what is that, 45%, 46 degree angle. We typically want to be between like 30 and 40 degrees is kind of ideal, but that's pretty good. Here's where some of the issue comes in. So here we are kind of with the breath. So you can see how much he's rotating to get that breath. We're up around 70 degrees. When it should be closer to, this would be kind of the ideal, maybe right about there, in terms of the recovery. So a lot of that's just because he's rotating so much. And then here's where you see all the drag. And you can see kind of the legs just don't look like they're connected to the stroke at all, and he's struggling to find that connection. So one of the first things that we tried was we got out the Fike brick, which is a weighted kickboard. It weighs about 6 pounds. It's got enough buoyancy on it to make it neutrally buoyant. But if you put any weight on it, it sinks. So what you've got to do then is lift that brick from the core. Don't try to lift it from the shoulders. So you're lifting it in one piece all connected from the core. Really, really engaging the core. You can think about trying to lift that belly button up into the core. Then we also cued him while he was doing this and with his head out of the water, trying to bring up his hips and his feet. And so we're putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the core to engage while he's recruiting this other muscle group. So we're trying to stimulate kind of that neuromuscular connection between his core and the other muscle group. Okay? And making that movement. And so you can see here as we go through, he'll start to get a little bit better as we cue him. So there he goes. His feet start to come up, and then he starts getting tired. And this is where, we want to talk about, we can teach you kind of the perfect swim stroke for 20, 30 seconds. Theoretically. We'll just kind of live in fantasy land for a second. But unless you have the practice that you've been doing it a lot, where you've got the strength and conditioning and fitness specific to that movement in the water, you can hold it for 30 seconds, but what happens after 30 seconds when you're doing an hour and 15-minute swim, hour and 30-minute swim? And you've just got to have the practice time in to hold that position. And that's really where the demanding part of swimming is. It's in that practice where you have to have a lot of focus on the movement you're making. And there's just kind of no getting around it. There's no shortcuts. I mean, you can make it more efficient, certainly, but it's just a lot of focus, hard work, and consistency. So, as always, thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, comment down below. And I'm always happy to answer questions. And again, thanks for tuning in.